Is anyone there?
I'm trying to embrace my damn natural face at the minute. Don't know, hate it, love it. I don't know. Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Harmony Nice and today I'm going to be doing another well-awaited, long-deserved, unsolved mystery video. Now this one's going to be a little bit different because it actually involves a kind of a collection of disappearances of 3 people that all disappeared at the same time. It's super odd, super crazy, and I've kind of found myself in a hole of researching it, which is why it has taken so long to come out, so sorry about that, you guys. And this case is so different and so many of these theories do not match up with the actual case. It's so strange. So let's just jump right into it because we've got so much to get through today. So on June 7th, 1992, Suzanne Streeter, Stacey McCall and Suzanne Streeter's mum, Cheryl Levitt, all disappeared from Suzanne Streeter's and Cheryl Levitt's home in Springfield, Missouri. Prior to the disappearance, Suzanne was 19 years old, Stacey was 18 years old, and Cheryl was 47 years old. And the 2 youngest girls, Stacey and Suzanne, both attended Kickapoo High School in their hometown up until the day of their disappearance. The day before their disappearance was actually their last day at this high school. Whereas Suzanne's mother, Cheryl, actually worked as a cosmetologist at a local beauty salon in the surrounding area. Suzanne was extremely outgoing, she was extremely bubbly, happy, described as being extremely likable, very popular, and she was extremely close to her mother Cheryl, as it was just her and her mother living at 1717 Delmar Street in Springfield, Missouri at the time. She also wanted to follow in her mother's footsteps and become a hairdresser, much like the sort of field that her mother was in. But as Stacey, on the other hand, was super bubbly, happy, extremely intelligent. After university, she wanted to attend Missouri State University. Mother said she was also kind of like crazy and spacey and used to come out with space cadet things, so they used to call her Spacey, Stacey, and she lived at home with her family. She lived with her father, her mother, Janice McCall, and from what I'm aware, I believe that she had 3 other siblings, I think. Sorry, no, 2 other siblings, but I literally couldn't find any information about them at all. And Suzanne's mother, Cheryl, was described as an extremely fiery woman who had an extreme kind of lust for life, but she had been through a lot. She recently went through a divorce, but she was extremely strong, and she had literally just found the house of her dreams that she was going to put a deposit on soon. But she was known as being extremely hardworking and had like a really great drive. And of course she was a single mother. Her and Stacey were extremely close. I believe that but she did have another son. I think that's all the children that she had. Another brother, but I'm not quite 100% sure if it's a brother from a previous marriage or that it's her actual brother. He has the same second name as Suzanne, but I'm not 100% sure whether she had them or not, but I know it was just them 2 in the house. Prior to this disappearance, Stacey and Suzanne were friends. They were kind of like acquaintancey friends. They knew each other really well because they used to be extremely close in grad school, so they were all very close, but they kind of drifted apart more when it came to high school because Suzanne was super popular. She used to hang out with all the popular kids and, you know, she was liked by everybody. She dated the kind of high school bad boy and things like that, and, you know, she was, you know, in a different crowd, whereas Stacey was kind of more goofy and she hung around with the goofy crowd at school. But these 2 still had a bond from being close in grad school. So on June 6th, 1992, only a day before the 3 women went missing, 2 young girls, Suzanne and Stacey, had just attended their graduation ceremony, and they were also planning to attend a few parties that night with a bunch of other girls and boys. Stacey had told her mum that day that she was planning to drive to Branson, which was near Springfield, Missouri, after she had been to the parties and things like that, and then stay in a hotel and then get up in the morning and go to White Walker Branson Amusement Park. But Janice, Stacey's mother, really didn't want her to do that since she was terrified that there was going to be a car crash or something, so she begged her not to. But at 10:30 that day, Stacey called her mother and told her not to worry and that she was going to be staying at a friend's house named Janelle with a bunch of other girls instead of driving to Branson. But upon arriving, the 2 realised it was extremely full, and Janelle asked if it was possible if them 2 could accommodate themselves and go stay somewhere else. And Suzanne offered for Stacey to come back and stay at her house, since she had a brand new waterbed and it wasn't that far away, and then they could get ready together in the morning and then meet Janelle and the rest of the girls and boys at the water amusement park the next morning. So Stacey agreed, and they left Janelle's house together at just past 2 in the morning, and they arrived at Cheryl Levitt's and Suzanne Streeter's home around 15 minutes later. A few hours before that, at 11:15, Suzanne's mother, Cheryl, was on the phone to her friend talking about the painting amore, and then was believed to retire to her bed after that soon after. I just realised that my camera's kind of wonky, so hope you don't mind me changing that. On the morning of June 7th, 1992, Suzanne's best friend Nigel called Suzanne around 8 AM to ask when the girls would be arriving at the water park, but Suzanne did not get back to him. Nigel stated that he got the answering machine, he left a message, he waited for her to reply, laid back down, and then never got an answer from her. Around 9 AM, Janelle and her boyfriend, the girls whose house they were supposed to be staying at the night before, decided to go around Cheryl's house and just make sure that the girls were there and that they were still coming, because they could not get hold of them either, and they were planning to meet anyway. So she came to the house, and upon arriving, Janelle and her boyfriend both found the door unlocked. Nobody answered the door, so they decided to enter the home and see if they were just asleep or something like that. And upon entering the home, Suzanne, Stacey, and Suzanne's mother, Cheryl, were all nowhere to be seen. It was apparent to Janelle that all of the girls had arrived at home the night before, considering all of their cars were in the driveway. There had some makeup wipes on the floor. It looked like one of the beds had been slept in. Their purses, Cheryl's cigarettes were sitting on the side as well, but the women were nowhere to be seen. The first thing that Janelle and her boyfriend noticed was firstly the glass light outside the house was smashed, but the light bulb was still intact. Upon searching the house and trying to find the women there, they actually found Cheryl's Yorkshire Terrier, Cinnamon, locked in the bathroom, and she seemed extremely scared and distressed. All the lights are off but the television on, but it was fuzzy and white. The house was still pretty immaculate and there was no signs of any struggle. Cheryl's cigarettes were left on the side, as well as the girls' purses, including Cheryl's, which had a £900 deposit inside of it. So it was clear that they hadn't been robbed. So Janelle decided to clean up the glass of the light that was smashed outside, just because she thought that Cheryl really wouldn't like that if they came home to it. And only a few minutes later, the house received a call. Janelle answered it, and it was a strange man with a shrew voice, making sexual innuendos, and she hung up instantly. Man called once more, but Janelle didn't speak to him this time, as she assumed it was a stupid high school prank. But overall, the house seemed extremely undisturbed. Like, nobody had left or entered the house. Nothing was broken other than the globe light outside. Because of all those reasons, it was clear that something wasn't right. From that day onwards, it was reported that 10 to 20 people entered the house after Janelle told people that they were nowhere to be seen, including Suzanne's friend Nigel, who instantly noticed that, weirdly, Suzanne was not parked in her usual space. Now, this may not sound odd at all, but according to Nigel, she always parked in the exact same space every single time, and they always used to take the mick out of her because she kind of had OCD tendencies where she would park in the same space every single time. They'd always tease her about it. They'd always tease her about it. But he just found that extremely odd. One of the next people to arrive was Stacey's mother. Stacey's mother, Janice, she had been trying to get hold of Stacey all morning and then arrived at Cheryl's a couple of hours later. Like I said, lots of people entered the house, friends and family, and all of them helped clean the house upon awaiting the arrival for the three girls home. And the reason they kind of didn't contact anyone at this point was because I think all of them were genuinely expecting them all to just arrive home, since they weren't really concerned about the door being locked, since it was a very apparently safe neighborhood and people used to just leave their doors unlocked sometimes, especially in the early 90s, but I don't know if that's true or not. Enough was enough for Janice. She was too worried about her daughter Stacey, so she decided to call the police from the home phone and report them missing. And after she had hung up to the police, she checked the voicemail on the phone to make sure there was no messages for any of the 3 women, and there was one from the same strange man that had called Janelle earlier. Again, just making extremely odd sexual innuendos and things like that, really inappropriate things. And upon hanging up, Janice accidentally deleted the message, which unfortunately later would have been extremely helpful for police evidence. But everyone at the time and everyone involved thought it was a stupid graduation prank. It was literally like the 3 girls had disappeared into thin air. It didn't look like anyone had entered the house, didn't look like anyone had left the house. They were just gone. Later that day, as night fell, everybody began to get into a bit more of the panic. And Janice decided to call the police again and check up on it and say, look, these girls have not returned home yet, then officially reported them missing. The FBI was called and the investigation officially commenced. And from the start, the police could not make sense of this at all. Firstly, because the house, unfortunately, was seemingly untouched. As a lot of people cleaned the house that day, there was so much of the evidence was disturbed. There was no signs of struggle, the dog was unharmed, there was money sitting on this side. And the next question the police was asking was, how the hell did these 3 women, full-grown women, go missing? It's not like it's a child, it's not like it's 3 children, it's not like it's one person where you could sit back and be like, okay, I understand that. But 3 grown women were taken, or gone somehow, which led the police to believe that there was more than one person involved in this disappearance. Not to mention the lack of evidence around the house because of everybody cleaning it up, including the glass globe, which could have been substantial evidence to see why it was smashed. And family and friends of the 3 girls had come over that day, and over 10 people had entered and exited the house, so whatever evidence there was, it had been disturbed. There was no unknown unusual hairs in there was no blood, there was no DNA, nothing. But they did still automatically determine foul play was involved and decided that the women either had to exit this house for some reason, was taken in some sense, or kidnapped. And straight away, this case became heavily involved in the social media. Search parties were heavily organised for all 3 of them a couple of weeks after, and the Springfield's missing 3 women were broadcasted on America's Most Wanted TV show. That is where the hints and the tips about the girls' whereabouts began to flood in. There was a few helpful tips. The first was someone reportedly saw somebody that looked like Suzanne Streeter driving a green truck. She said she saw Suzanne early on June the 7th, driving an older model pale avocado green van. The van was seen 2 miles away from Suzanne's and Cheryl's home, and apparently Suzanne looked absolutely terrified, and there was a man shouting at Suzanne from the back seat, saying, you better keep driving if you know what's good for you. The police department stopped lots of pale green vans and ID'd loads of people and did look into this heavily, but no evidence was found. Police even parked a similar van outside of their station to see if it would trigger anyone's minds, but unfortunately the van theory led to a dead end. There was over 5,000 tips of people claiming that they had information about the girls, but nothing ever came from it. Later that year, on December 31st in 1992, America's Most Wanted received an anonymous tip with information about the women's disappearances, but unfortunately the call got cut off upon transferring them to a different line, and the person was gone, and they tried to make announcements and repeal to try to find this man for this information, but nothing ever came from it, which is crazy to me, like absolutely insane. Like, just call them back. So that is it for the information section, and it does not seem like there's a lot, but I've literally researched this case to the absolute point of like insanity, and there's literally nothing to go on. But now this to me is where the case gets extremely weird. It's time for the theories and suspects section of this video. I'm going to be telling you the main ones involving this case because there's literally hundreds. Like, I've been looking through Reddit and things like that for days and days and days, because a lot of people have like no clue. And if not, I genuinely believe that this video would be around 50 years long. So we're just gonna go through the main ones. So the first theory of what happened to the girls is that they were kidnapped, murdered, and then buried underneath a hospital parking lot nearby. Now, this sounds insane, but wait till you hear the information on it. Investigators discovered that upon the girls' day of disappearance, Cox Hospital parking lot was being filled in with concrete that day. It was investigated, but as there was no substantial evidence, they basically just brushed it off and said that there was not enough evidence to go on, and that it was kind of like a weird theory that had just came along, and there was nothing that would give them the hint that these women were actually buried there, other than the fact that it was being built the same day as that, and it would cost millions and millions of dollars to actually dig it up. But in 2007, this theory is actually looked into again. 15 years after the women went missing, a crime reporter, Kathleen Barrett, and Rick Norland, a medical engineer, decided to come and look at the hospital parking lot to see if they could see and find anything from the three girls. Rick was called because he was an expert at grounding penetrating radar. Sounds lovely. Which you can like somehow scan the ground and visualize objects and things like that are buried beneath the surface. Kathleen and Norland decided to scan one corner of the parking garage that was in the hospital's parking lot, and they actually found 3 anomalies that were roughly the same size and parallel and perpendicular to each other. All 3 were very, very shallow in the ground, so pretty near the top. And while it couldn't be proven that they were actually bodies, the scans were consistent with a typical gravesite location. Unfortunately, the Springfield Police Department did not see this as enough substantial evidence to actually prove that this was the girls being buried there, and it wasn't enough to justify them digging up concrete, so nothing had been done about it yet. And I do understand where the police are coming from, like I get it, it's a very far-fetched thing to say to dig up like millions of dollars worth of concrete, and like I get what people are saying about like how would they sneak in 3 women into concrete, like it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Saying that, if they were shallow to the surface of the concrete, when they like the builders closed or whatever, it obviously wasn't going to be dry, because concrete doesn't dry for frickin' ages. So it is feasible, personally, I think, to be able to possibly dump something in the surface then. It will probably only sink a little bit because it would have dried a little bit, but it's a little far-fetched. Some people even theorize that maybe one of the workers could be in it, but like to find that out now, to find out who's working on parking lot in 1992 is just a bit insane. So now for the more suspects, I'm going to start with 2 kind of empty theory suspects, but they're still worth noting since so many people still believe them. The first theory I don't believe, but it was heavily speculated on Reddit. So the first theory is either Cheryl's ex-husband or Suzanne's brother were involved in the disappearance of the 3 girls. The theory goes that basically it is believed that the people were close to the family or knew a lot about the family in order to have pulled this off. Firstly, because the dog was left seemingly unharmed. It is believed that they were not picked at random. So it is very heavily theorized that Cheryl was the person of like pure, that's who they wanted, that's who someone was going after. So they knew that Cheryl was going to be home alone at night. And there's also the speculation that the 10 to 20 people that entered the house that day, that somebody who visited the house was involved with that, as a lot of evidence had been cleared up. And I genuinely don't think that there could be nothing. Someone goes into a house to steal something, unless they're like spies, they leave something behind, like you leave footprints. So cleaning the house, it is believed that somebody close to them thoroughly cleaned the house so that no evidence was found. So this theory was determined that either Suzanne's brother, and he was actually a suspect in this case at the start, but he was dropped, mainly because there was things saying that he didn't get along with his mother at all. Again, I'm not quite sure if it's his mother or his stepmother, I'm not 100% sure of that, but either way, they did not get along as a pair and had major differences. So it's believed that Suzanne's brother wanted to take revenge on Cheryl, but something that could have gone wrong along the way, and he could have ended up killing Cheryl, or something was happening and he killed Cheryl, or he did something to Cheryl, and then the girls returned home and he panicked and kidnapped them and killed them somewhere else too. And the same kind of theory goes for Cheryl's ex-husband too, But again, this theory to me is a little bit far-fetched. There's not a lot of evidence to back it up at all, and also you have to remember that they were family. I know there's psychotic people in the world, but at the end of the day, like, if he had something against his mother, I don't see the reason why he would kill his sister too. The next kind of empty theory, but again, loads of people speculated it, is that Janelle and her boyfriend were involved. Just because Janelle seems to be heavily involved in this case. A lot of people were speculating and saying, firstly, Janelle, the last people to see the two girls and also the first people to get to the house in the morning. Some people were speculating that they found it weird that Janelle and her boyfriend entered the home after knocking instead of just calling the police or trying to call them or something like that, and walked in contaminating the place, and then claims that there was an obscene phone call there. To be fair, if I knocked on my friend's door, I would not enter it, or I would call someone else, like I wouldn't just walk in. But there was not a lot of evidence to back up this theory. It's kind of mysterious. I think they should have been investigated a little bit more. So the first kind of main suspect believed was actually Suzanne's ex-boyfriend, Justin Wrestler. Justin and Suzanne actually only broke up a few months before the three women's disappearance, and this is like the school bad boy that I was talking about previously. Suzanne and him had a pretty messy breakup due to some weird activity on Dustin's end. Justin and his close friend were actually charged of vandalizing a mausoleum and taking several skulls from there and placing them in trees nearby, and also found guilty of taking gold teeth out of skulls and selling them too. When his friend was questioned about the incident, it led back to Dustin's house where there was animal skulls found, candles found, and a poster with a circle on it, which I don't really know how that relates to anything. But it was apparent and well known, apparently according to his friendship group, that he was involved in satanic, ritualistic sort of ordeals, as well as obviously being involved with these grave robbing crimes. Both of these boys were taken into questioning about the disappearance of the girls, and they tried to find a connection between the two. They both denied having anything to do with it, but apparently at one point Dustin's friends stated that he hated the three women and they were bitches, and that he wished them all dead, which is just so fucked up. The police actually couldn't end up confirming their alibis, but they also couldn't find any evidence to the boys doing anything either. Some people actually even speculated that they could have been taken as sacrifices for ritualistic purposes, or to get possible revenge on Suzanne after the breakup. People speculated that he could have been following her, waiting for a moment to be alone, but then when they found the three girls alone at the house, that unfortunately Stacey and Cheryl were in the way, so they had to do something about that too. Just because the house was so flawless, I just don't believe that this was like a crime gone wrong. If anything, I believe it was extremely planned. That doesn't rule them out completely, I don't think. But just the way that his friend spoke about these girls is extremely worrying, and I don't think they should have been dropped as suspects, even if they had to. So the next suspect is Gary Dwayne Hall. So a few months after the women went missing, a tip was actually given to the police by a man called Larry Dwayne Hall, which was Gary Dwayne Hall's brother. And in this tip, he told the police that apparently Gary had been stalking one of the women for a while before they went missing, as he had told him about her, but it wasn't apparent on which one of them it was. On the phone, allegedly, Larry said that the three girls were kidnapped, killed, and then their bodies were dumped. And before that, he made them do odd things. Apparently, they were dumped in the Mark Twain National Forest, around 30 to 90 miles away from Cheryl's home. Apparently, he was also the owner of the Green Fan, but throughout further investigation, nothing really ever came from it. There was also speculations that Cheryl was being stalked due to the kind of crude messages that were left for her, that this could be somebody of that sort, and that does make sense with him being a suspect. And obviously Cheryl was intending to be at home that night by herself. If you're a stalker, like, you tend to know when they're going to be alone, and maybe he had been spying on her for that and didn't expect the girls to come home. There was a theory that possibly he could have been waiting in the house for the perfect moment, and then the girls arrived home and he didn't know what to do, so he panicked and kidnapped them all with a weapon to lure them out of the house. Again, he was dropped as a suspect because they couldn't actually prove this. This one to me is actually probably the most believable one. Like, it does seem odd about the phone calls that they don't tie into anything, but they were obviously there because Stacey's mum heard them. It's not like a lying thing. The next suspect is the most highest believed suspect of them all, and it is Robert Craig Fox. Robert Craig Fox was convicted kidnapper and also robber, and was actually believed to be involved in a murder in Florida. So he was imprisoned in Texas at the time. In 1997, he told journalists that he knew what happened to all 3 of the women. They had been kidnapped, murdered, and then buried. And he claimed that their bodies would never ever be recovered. As well as that, Robert actually lived in Springfield at the time with his girlfriend. When interviewed about the women, he told investigators that he was in church with his girlfriend the time of the disappearance, and then he was at home with his parents the night of the disappearance, and his girlfriend actually confirmed the alibi for the church, and his parents confirmed the alibi for him being with them at night. But his girlfriend actually retracted her alibi and said that he told her to say this. The false information basically led them to a dead end. His parents too could have been lying about that if he asked his girlfriend to do it. Like, why does that make any difference? Authorities actually decided that he was trying to get recognition for the murders of the girls, which is like a common thing for serial killers to do. So they didn't really take anything he said as law, and they were just like, whatever, and they dropped him as a suspect, which is so freaking irritating because I swear this guy has something to do with the case. Like, I swear on it. I fucking swear. I swear I could be an investigator. Like, I could crack this case. Robert told authorities that he would finally tell them what they wanted to hear and what happened to the girls after his mother had died, and nothing until then. I personally think even if he's lying, this should have been looked into loads more. Like, they should have cracked down on this man and tried to get answers somehow, especially if he was living there at the time and he asked his girlfriend to lie about his alibi. Like, why? Why is that a thing? The last story is that the women were taken and sold into human trafficking, that either Suzanne or Stacey was being stalked for a long time before that, and they saw the opportunity and they took it, and they used guns to lure them out of the house, which is why there was no disturbances inside. And they left and seemingly disappeared. There is so much to this case and so many theories to how the Springfield 3 disappeared, and I could literally go on forever and ever and ever, but this is already like an hour-long video probably, so I have to stop there. If you have any other theories to what happened to this girl, please leave them down below. I would love to read them. If you have any other information on this case, leave them down below as well. I try my best to get all of the information there, but I do occasionally miss crucial subjects. And it has even been speculated that it could have been extraterrestrial. I didn't really want to mention that because I think it kind of puts a light onto the situation, and there's nothing light about this situation at all. But let me know what you guys think down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this unsolved mystery video. I am going to be seeing you Sunday with a very exciting video, and then next week I've got some collabs happening. It's all going on. If you know anything about this, by possible chance, always report things like that. That's the most important thing to do. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye guys.